Dogs' behavioral classifications exist on a spectrum, regardless of their breeds. Some dogs are submissive, rolling over and even peeing a little when they're on their back to show submission in an effort to gain acceptability and favorability from an approaching dog or human. Other dogs are very dominant and will immediately approach, tail raised high with noticeably short and quick wags, while posturing their heads as high as possible to look down on another dog and show that they are higher, all the while never breaking eye contact. These are two extreme examples of completely submissive and completely dominant behaviors. But most dogs actually fall on a spectrum between these two extreme points, even showing bits of both dominant and submissive behavior with different dogs or humans and in different environments. I've owned dogs for many years and also board multiple dogs from a varying array of households in my home at the same time. It isn't uncommon for me to have between 4 and 7 dogs for days at a time. Some of these dogs are regular guests, while others may be periodic visitors and visiting for the very first time. In a year's time, I average between 200 and 250 boarding stays, so not only do I witness all aspects of this behavioral spectrum, but it's my personal responsibility to identify and manage these behaviors to ensure that all of my dogs remain safe and have a great time. I only have 2 rules. Number 1, no bullying, and number 2, everyone gets to have fun. Rule number 1, no bullying. Regardless of whether a dog is submissive or dominant, I do not tolerate bullying in any way. Bullying may include prolonged tracking of another dog, meaning stalking, regularly blocking their path, or standing over them at every opportunity to establish complete dominance. Obviously, this can make a more submissive dog uncomfortable, and this behavior violates that rule. Obviously, more aggressive behavior, such as growling, jawing at the back of the neck to claim the upper hand, and aggressively barking at a dog who's trying to play with a toy or eat their own meal, is also unacceptable. Number 2, everyone has to have fun. Whether a dog prefers to spend time alone with a chew toy or take a nap or romp and play with the others, as long as they're playing by the rules, I encourage them to just be happy. Now, it isn't uncommon for owners to express that they're having trouble with their dogs instigating bullying or even dominant behavior of other kinds. Sometimes they're embarrassed to take their dogs to public places like restaurants or even the dog park for fear that the dog will bite or that they actually might be shunned by others. So the first thing I express is that the dog is not right or wrong, good or bad for doing any of these things. They're simply acting out instinctive behavior common to their ancestral pecking orders. What needs to happen is a shift in reporting, as it were. Think of a wolf pack pecking order as a reporting order in the army. Within each wolf pack, there's an alpha male and alpha female, under which there's a descending order all the way down to the most submissive. In your home, you may very well assume that you're the general of the army, when in fact, your dog may believe he or she is the general of the army. So how is it that both of you might assume that you're the general of the army and have no idea that the other believes the exact same thing about themselves? Well, I've consistently found that this is caused by a distinct difference in the assumptions humans make about relationships versus the assumptions dogs make about relationships. Case in point, humans couple love and respect as complementary characteristics in relationships. So if your spouse loves you, you can expect that your spouse will also respect you. When these two things are no longer in alignment, dissonance ensues. I mean, to be fair though, we actually do have humans who don't couple love and respect, but we have a special name for that condition. It's called antisocial personality disorder. On the other hand, dogs do not couple love and respect as complementary characteristics in relationships. So, if one dog loves another dog in the pack, it may be disconcerting for a human to witness when one dog does not allow the other to eat before them, stand higher than them in their presence, or even to look them directly in the eye without diverting their eyes in submission. So, when you're standing there with a treat in your hand and telling your dog to sit or lie down or speak before you allow a treat, You're assuming that the dog not only wants the treats, but also loves and respects you. So that's why your bidding is met with compliance. Well, not necessarily. You see, dogs pick up behavioral patterns very quickly. So ringing the bell for a treat, think Pavlov's conditioning experiment, right? Sitting or rolling over for a treat is just how they get what they want. They don't necessarily see the person speaking with them as more senior or higher ranking. It's just what the dog has to do or has become accustomed to doing to get treats. So when you put $1 into a vending machine and follow the instructions by pressing B1 to get Doritos, right? You're just doing what you need to get chips. In no way do you view that vending machine as superior or higher ranking. This is why I personally find conditioning based on rewarding with treats less favorable than conditioning based on affection and praise. Now, I may use treats for a very short period, or maybe even an ultrasonic dog training device, such as this PetCare dog training ultrasonic device, linked below in the description, or this particular dog training collar, also linked below in the description. Now, I use these for a short period just to train the dog on me, but within a few hours or sometimes a few days, no treats or even training devices are even necessary, okay? So keep in mind, this doesn't mean that treats can't work to get a dog's attention or even be a great training reward. My focus is simply not to get the dogs to do what I ask, but instead, it's just to have them view me as their provider and protector, or the Army General, the alpha or leader of the pack. They must respect my commands and listen, even if I do not have treats. That's extremely important. Safety is my first priority in conditioning, much the same as a sergeant in the Army is responsible for the safety and direct actions of every soldier under their command. There's as much authority as there is protection and provision being exercised in these mirrored relationships of an Army general and a trainer or owner. Although from outside it may look like it's all about authority and control. It's imperative that when I tell a dog to stop, that my words are heeded. Whether they're running into the street or toward a dog that's unknown or even unleashed, I need to be the general of their army who commands are heeded without question. Many owners affiliate love with treats. I mean, people do love to eat and so do dogs, so there is kind of a focus on giving their dogs food or treats with or without commands, just because they love the responses they get when their dogs see them as fun and favorable. This actually blurs the lines, though, for a dog between listening when it's important and listening when they want something from the vending machine. So, now that we've established how dogs view relationships, we should likely talk about the differences in language between dogs and humans. You may notice that there are times when you want your dog to listen because it's important, and your dog may push back or pretend not to hear or even divert their eyes and pretty much continue on the path that they were headed. Or they may simply look at you and keep doing what they were doing regardless of your apparent sense of urgency. Well, obviously they do this because they've not been incentivized to prioritize your commands over their own interests. Remember, they still love you, but they may not respect you the way you feel you need to be respected. Thus the reason they do not comply. So, what language do dogs use when they're higher ranking and give a command? Well, they aren't anatomically inclined to speak English, so they employ the use of body language, chirps, barks, growls, or whines for communication. Therefore, it would be wise for us to adopt their most native language in a way that will help them understand what we want more quickly without much guesswork. Consider that many of my clients can relate to spouse number one in the home, who values respect more highly than love and likes the dog, may show periodic affection toward the dog, but is otherwise not overly affectionate with the dog. On the other hand, spouse number two expresses a perplexing series of events after not only showing the dog affection much more often than spouse number one, but also allowing the dog to sit on their lap, feeding the dog treats, and doing what they call spoiling their babies, right? Until spouse number one comes home from work, and as soon as the dog hears the garage door, It's almost as if spouse number 2 doesn't even exist anymore. The dog may follow spouse number 1 around the house for 30 to 40 minutes or so after they get home before even achieving direct eye contact and maybe, if they're lucky, getting a scratch behind the ears before being ignored all over again. In the meantime, spouse number 2 feels like chopped liver, right? Deserted and forgotten. If spouse number 1 is in a bad mood or catches a dog ripping through a trash bag, the tone of voice alone is enough to send the dog running for spouse number 2, as spouse number 1 throws a fit. So what's really going on here? The answer is the dog views spouse number 1 as the protector and provider, the alpha or general of the army. This explains the dog's groveling for attention, acceptance, and favorability while being largely ignored for the better part of an hour every single day, right? In fact, spouse number 2 has to plead and beg for the dog just to come in from the yard, while spouse number 1 barely needs to speak or lift a finger to get the dog to listen. Body language and tone go a long way in a wolf pack. Now, if you can relate to spouse number 2, chopped liver, don't feel bad. The dog still loves you, but you likely value love and affection over respect, which is why the dog considers you the vending machine for belly rubs and for treats. The dog's allegiance and respect lie with the alpha, spouse number 1. The first thing you need to accept, if you want to change this dynamic that is that your dog will never love you any less if you establish yourself as a higher ranking commander in the pack. This is where humans harbor feelings of guilt, and they'll say things like, "I can't do that. That's my baby. I love him." Right? Well, you may want to consider that your dog has no feelings of guilt whatsoever when they ignore you and when you ask them to do something and they don't want to do it, but they're not afraid to come climb in your lap for belly rubs and treats right after they disrespected you. Your feelings of guilt are not mutual. Get over it. So if your dog doesn't listen to you or will even growl at you when you're near their food or their toys or simply when they don't want to comply, know that they were born with an instinct to exercise dominance and you have some work to do to earn a senior spot in the pack above your furry companion. This also explains why so many dogs with behavioral issues end up in animal shelters in line to be euthanized because someone got a dog they thought was cute, right? Spoiled the dog without recognizing its need to learn how to follow a more dominant owner, thus the frequent records of shelter dogs having biting and aggressive behaviors in their past. They're given up to shelters because their owners do not know how to raise a dominant dog, ultimately putting the dog's very life in danger, as well as themselves and their families when the dog's not properly reared. A dog who understands where they fit in a pack is a happy dog. They know their responsibilities and they know their limits, just like they would in a wolf pack. Dominant dogs in a pack exert dominance by fighting. But as humans, we don't need to fight or even abuse our pets to show that we're more dominant. We have the gift of advanced intelligence and self-reflection. This, coupled with controls in the dog's environment, is all we need to establish ourselves as dominant. Remember, at no time is it acceptable to abuse your dog when establishing dominance. This may instill mistrust, making them leery of your intentions, and you can always love your dog and show affection. But posturing during these trainings with a stern voice and stance is important for their development. So, let's look at 4 different controls that you can employ immediately to establish dominance. Number 1, dominant posturing. Remaining higher than your dog, especially when giving commands, is another very important control. Remember, one of the bullying behaviors I don't allow is standing above another dog at every chance and intimidating them when they eat or when they play with toys. Posture is extremely important in a wolf pack. Number 2, leading the pack. Ensure that you do not allow your dog to regularly lead you on walks. This is a key benefit of dominance in a pack, because they determine what direction the pack takes. Be sure to have your dog heel periodically and maintain dominance on walks and remind the dog that you are in control. Ensure that every important member of the household also follows these instructions so that your dog understands that they are below the adults as well as the children in the home. The best time to establish these controls are during the puppy stage. But if you adopt a dog, it is important that you establish these controls immediately so that your dog will not need to fight you to maintain the dominance you yourself may have allowed before things got out of hand. Number 3, sleeping arrangements. Many owners allow their dogs to sleep with them, which can be adorable, but actually ends up dropping the owner to less than alpha, as the more dominant dogs in the pack reserve the best sleeping spots and arrangements for themselves. No others are allowed to sleep in their spot or on top of them. And yes, I know, they beg and they give you the puppy dog eyes, and you love to cuddle them, but giving in means giving up your spot. If they sleep on top of you, especially around your head, you can be certain that they believe they have claimed Army General status. When you see dogs playing with one another and constantly mounting one another or posturing their heads over the backs or heads of other dogs when they play, this is practicing dominance as well. It's instinctive, whether they're playing or not. Number 4, feeding and meal times. Food is another important element or control that we can use to our advantage. In a wolf pack, food does not come easily. A pack of wolves may roam 20 to 30 miles in a single day in pursuit of a kill. So control of food is another way dominant wolves establish order. Many owners get lazy and leave food out all day, so that the dog assumes that it will always be available and that they will never have to do anything to have access to it. This means they will easily assume that since they can eat at any time, they're leading the pack. It's important that your dog experiences you feeding them so that they understand that you are sharing the kill or providing for them. They will naturally understand your place in the pack when you do this. A dog who eats without your permission or one who helps themselves to human food has encroached on dominant ground. Learning to wait for food is exactly what you will observe in a wolf pack, whether it's waiting until every member of the family has eaten or waiting for your command to begin eating. One way or another, they're not to eat first or understand that the food literally is provided by anyone other than you. This is very important, especially with dominant dogs. So if you've not already established this control, you'll want to keep your dog's food out of reach for a while after you fill the bowl. This will keep the dog from helping themselves at their leisure and establish that you determine when they eat, even when the food is visible. If the dog is not a puppy, you might need to do this regularly for a while until the dog adopts this new practice, but it's particularly important. Again, each family member must be above the dog in the pack, so you may want to have family members take turns with these exercises to ensure that the dog respects all family members in the household. So, if our case of spouse number 1 and spouse number 2 was not clear earlier, it should be now. Your dog will always love you, and you will always love them. So don't be afraid to lose that dynamic when establishing dominance. Dogs are our companions, but we're ultimately responsible for their safety and their well-being. So you must put rules in place to help them understand where they fit in the pack. It will keep your family safer, your dog happier and more obedient, and you won't have to be embarrassed by a dramatic, lazy, or ornery furry companion in public. If you've learned anything from this video today, I'll encourage you to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. It won't cost you a dime, but it will help keep this video relevant so that it can reach more amazing dog lovers just like you. Feel free to check out the link in the description below so you can check out some of the tools and devices that I like to use for training, and also some of the other videos to give you a better in-depth view of how they might work. I've been Kevin with Online Shopping My Way. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.